Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Tennille Gaither. I'm the project lead for Planetary Nomenclature at USGS Astrogeology. I'm going to discuss this morning the role of planetary nomenclature in geologic mapping and lunar exploration in support of Artemis. Next slide, please. We'll start with an obvious definition. Planetary nomenclature, like terrestrial nomenclature, is a cartographic and communication tool that is used to uniquely identify a specific feature on the surface of a planet so that that feature can be easily located, described, and discussed by scientists and the general public alike. Next slide, please. Official names provide reliable points of reference for authors and mappers to spatially describe specific planetary features, geologic units, and geologic histories. Therefore, nomenclature is a critical data layer for geologic maps. For example, on the right, the image shows a section of the description of map units for the geologic map of Jezero Crater. 4 geologic unit names use the official IAU feature names, Jezero Crater and Nili Planum. We've got the 2 Jezero fan units, the Jezero floor unit, and the Nili Planum fan unit. The use of standardized nomenclature in geologic mapping is essential because of the long-term propagation of geologic unit names and histories throughout the science literature, subsequent mapping efforts, and even to the public through STEM outreach, NASA blogs, news articles, social media posts. USGS published maps show only official nomenclature, but other publications and presentations often show informal nomenclature. We've seen some examples of such nomenclature in this workshop. Some of our presentations showed the US state names theme that was used in the JET 3 geomaps, and informal crater names used in other maps of the candidate landing regions. Next slide, please. So how are planetary names approved? Official names for planetary surface features are approved by the IAU, the International Astronomical Union. Name proposals are first reviewed by the task group for that particular body, and then reviewed and approved by the Working Group for Planetary System Nomenclature. The task groups and working groups are composed of all volunteer members from the science community. Since the 1980s, USGS Astrogeology has facilitated the name proposal and review process between the IAU and the planetary science community. With the financial support of NASA, we maintain the ever-growing database, it's over 16,000 names right now, which is accessible through the Gazetteer of Planetary Nomenclature website. The website, I've given the URL there, it has all the information needed for submitting a name proposal. So please check that out if you are planning to request a name. Next slide, please. I've listed here standards for official nomenclature. These are the IAU rules, conventions, and themes that will be most relevant to the Artemis missions. That red box outlines the themes for lunar craters of different sizes. Large craters, which are going to be larger than 3 kilometers in diameter, are named for scientists, engineers, and explorers who have made significant contributions to their fields. And small craters, which is a diameter range of 1 to 3 kilometers, are named with generalized first names. Given 3 centuries of telescope-based lunar mapping by multiple individuals, there are a lot of official names that contradict these modern rules, but the guidelines have been put in place to prevent the confusion and chaos that occurs with no community standards. Next slide, please. Okay, so that covers the most important generalities of official IAU nomenclature. Next, I'll discuss critical considerations and situations in which a combination of IAU formal nomenclature and informal names are relevant. This picture of Jack Schmitt at the Apollo 17 Station 6 site very nicely illustrates the multiple scales of features that are going to require unique names. This from bagged samples, sampling site names, to boulders like Tracy's Rock or Split Rock, and to near and distant larger features like East Massif and Bear Mountain that provide spatial context for navigation. Next slide, please. Okay, critical considerations of nomenclature for Artemis. There are scenarios in which unique names will be needed on a faster timescale than the 4 to 6 week long IAU review process can accommodate, such as real-time astronaut EVAs and traverses. So how can we anticipate and meet these needs? Another critical consideration is that NASA has embedded diversity and inclusion in the heart of the Artemis program. We see that on, the homepage or the landing website page for the Artemis program, where the first sentence talks about landing the first woman astronaut and first person of color astronaut on the moon. So we need to ensure as a community that both official and unofficial or informal names are also diverse and inclusive. To address these issues, we need to understand and anticipate the situational needs for names and the needs of those specific user groups. We should also consider lessons learned from the Apollo era and apply those to the short and long-term needs of a sustained lunar presence. Next slide, please. This slide documents situational needs and the user group of right now nomenclature. In the early Apollo era, the IAU was busy hashing out nomenclature for the newly imaged far side and didn't concern itself with detailed Apollo-related mission nomenclature. So informal names for minor topographic features used for navigational and landmark purposes were developed and applied by the mission planners and the astronauts themselves. These informal names were never meant to be official, nor even learned of by the broader science community or the general public, but many of these names were later approved by the IAU. So what are the pros and cons of on-the-fly naming? Pros. Such names are fast to apply and easy to remember for a small group of users who are often picking names that have personal significance. But the cons to that are that the subsequent approval, if those names are made official, then informal names can be inconsistent with existing standards and rules. And of course, these names have no diversity or inclusivity, which of course was not remotely a consideration back then. But still, it's something we have to consider today. Next slide, please.
2 minutes, just about.
Okay. In the 70s, the working group formulated rules and conventions to provide general guidance for future landed missions. They stated the position that they would not give official names to features smaller than 100 meters, and that any proposals to formalize such names had to follow the rules and themes. This guidance is relevant to both geologic mapping and non-geologic mapping scenarios and stakeholders. Next slide, please. Okay, so to put these considerations and lessons learned into specific recommendations, for all situations where the IAU standards can be applied, they should be, especially for geologic mapping. For situations where informal names are the tool of choice, naming schemes and name banks should be developed well in advance to ensure that names can be chosen quickly by stakeholders, and to ensure that such names are diverse, inclusive, impersonal, and complement without overlapping the formal IAU nomenclature scheme. An excellent example of implementation of this in guidance is the Mars 2020 team's use of the National Parks theme of Earth, National Parks of Earth theme. Next slide. Thank you. In conclusion, planetary surface feature names are not simply esoteric scientific labels. The propagation effect requires us to have an awareness of both the scientific and social impact of the names that we choose, whether it's a geologic unit name in a science paper, or hopefully a viral Twitter video of an Artemis 3 astronaut collecting a lunar rock sample. Coordination of geologic mappers, the broader planetary science community, and the IAU is necessary to meet the unique situational needs and user needs of the different stakeholders and to ensure diversity and inclusivity. Thank you.